Okay, so for this module, we are going to touch on two other leadership theories that I thought would be interesting to you. Obviously, as you flip through Nordhaus, you have discovered that there are a lot of theories out there. These two are pretty relevant and also pretty like modern as far as theory goes. And so I just thought it'd be worthwhile to touch base on them just a little bit. So path goal theory and leader member exchange, or as it is commonly known, LMX. So path goal theory, all of this hinges on the fit between the leader and the follower. So basically what it's saying is the leader is ultimately responsible for getting the follower to its goal. They need to do whatever kind of they need to do, be whoever they need to be, remove obstacles, or to kind of help the obstacles seem less daunting, right? In helping the follower reach their goal. And so that's what that second bullet point, it's the leader's responsibility to help followers reach their goals by either directing, guiding, coaching them along the way. So path goal is really talking about this blend of leadership style, follower need, and what's going on in relationship, like what kind of task is it, what's the environment like, and kind of what skills the follower needs to complete the task to the best of their ability. It really looks at how a leader motivates their followers or their teams to accomplish their goals. You can look at the tables in Nordhaus if you'd like, just, to touch on these. These are different 4 leadership styles that path goal includes. Being very directive, more supportive, very participative, and achievement oriented. And obviously, I think that kind of changes as the task changes, and also where the follower is in completion of the task. And so kind of my take on this, and we're going to get to strengths and weaknesses of the theory in the next slide, but we're supposed to help as leaders. We're supposed to help our followers reach their goals however they possibly can. I completely agree with that. I think the thing that's hard with this is that I also believe that consistency as a leader behavior is also very important too. So if a leader's constantly having to change the things they're doing to get the follower to meet their end goal, I think that's a bit of a challenge, right? Like the leader is going to be exhausted doing that. Everything changes, whether that's a follower's motive, whether that's the required leadership style, the environment changing. And so a leader has to constantly be on their toes. And so I feel like with this module, the leader is extending way more than the follower does. And I'm just a bigger believer in finding common ground and meeting in the middle. I'm not saying that happens all the time, right? And so leaders really have to discern like when, if, and how to remove obstacles. And I think when we start thinking about, path goal, maybe in an athletic setting, I think as coaches and as administrators that there's sometimes when we don't want to do the heavy lifting for them. We want to see our followers, we want to see our athletes, we want to see our right hands, right, and our entry-level interns problem solving on their own, and really like showing innovation, thinking outside the box, critical thinking. And so there's sometimes where we don't really want to have to do that, I think. And so I think that by constantly helping alleviate some of that stress of them, then we're just enabling them to continue on the same path that they're already on. And we're not really helping them grow as followers or grow to become leaders. Path goal is helpful because it does give leaders suggestions, but it isn't complete because it's not a very clear roadmap, right? The leader still has to do a lot of figuring out on his or her own as to what's the most effective. And also I think there's the component of trying to get to know who your followers are so that you can shift your leadership style with that. And I just personally think, it is a strong framework, very strong model. It makes sense, right? But I think the application of it's very, very difficult. Pluses and minuses, it's easily applied. We just kind of talked about that, right? Because it kind of gives you some different effective leadership styles that have been proven. It blends motivation, and it is, it's builds upon contingency theory. That's earlier in Nordhaus as well. And so it built upon a previously identified leadership theory, and it's very practical. It requires too many assumptions. And I think that's kind of what we've been talking about. The leader has to assume a lot of different things about what's going on. And what might be effective. I think that this maybe lends itself to a lot of time being wasted and a lot of energy being wasted. It does not involve relationship between the leader and the follower. It's very leader heavy. We talked about that, and does not account for gender differences, which as I read that, I was, kind of thinking which theories do take gender into consideration, but conversation another time. So LMX, leader member exchange. This is one of the theories that I specifically remember from my grad school work, because my professor, who was my committee chair and everything, and awesome, and a mentor and role model and all those things, she had us watch the movie The Devil Wears Prada to drive home the emphasis on LMX. And I don't know how many of you have seen it. It's a good movie. It's fun to watch. It has Meryl Streep, which, I mean, anything with Meryl Streep and or Stanley Tucci, like, I'm there. But you know, she plays Meryl Streep plays this character of Miranda, who's this upper echelon bigwig in the fashion industry, and she has two assistants. She has who she calls Emily, even though it's not their names, but she has one Emily, and then Anne Hathaway gets hired, named Andrea, and you see this, like, Anne Hathaway comes in, Emily Blunt's character is in the in crowd. Anne Hathaway is very much out of it, but as the movie shifts around, Anne Hathaway finds her way in and Emily finds her way out. But basically, that's what LMX is talking about. It's emphasizing the relationship and the interactions between leaders and followers, these very dyadic relationships, these one-on-one relationships. Nordhaus refers to them as their vertical dyad. In leader-member exchange, what it's saying is that the leader-follower dyad is very unique to each vertical dyad. No two are alike. So what happens here is you find that there's an in group and an out group. And I think this is pretty straightforward. I think if you've ever been on a playground in your life, you know what these two things mean, right? Or if you've ever been in middle school and in the cafeteria. So in group, receiving more reward, support, trust from the leader. They're in the know, right? They have these big expanded relationships that go beyond job descriptions and workplace policy. Out group is just very, very basic, very fundamental. They receive less of everything really from the leader. They're kind of out of the loop, and they just receive kind of a baseline supervision. That's a very formal relationship. Selection methods are inconsistent, really don't know. I mean, I think if we think about human nature, I think we think about ourselves, right? Like, we have a tendency to be drawn to people who are like us. You know, so maybe there's just like personal connections, similar interests, similar life experiences, but that's really kind of unknown as to what consistently goes into forming in and out groups. So one of the things that has, I feel like, evolved with LMX is that they've discovered that the in and out group thing really isn't the best thing for an organization. Shocker, right? And so Miranda Priestley is probably not the best example of a leader if you're looking at pop culture movies. But so this idea of leadership making phases was introduced, and basically what it is saying is that when leaders and followers have good exchanges and good relationships, they have a better feel for each other, they feel better about everything, and they accomplish more for the organization. So leaders should really try to work on to not have an out group, okay? And so leaders should develop quality relations with everyone so no one feels ostracized and the organization is maximized. There are 3 different phases. I think these are pretty straightforward when you think about it, but 3 phases in leaders kind of trying to eliminate out groups. The first one is stranger. It's very fundamental, kind of what we talked about, kind of where the out group starts, right? And then this acquaintance, where everybody starts kind of assessing each other and seeing, like, can I trust you? Are you reliable? It's much more relational. Let me ask you questions about your personal life, and how would you do over the weekend? And a little less transactional. And then the partner one is, you know, where you kind of get there and there's full acceptance, mutual respect, very reliable, and the respect and all these things of trust and reliability go both ways between leader and follower. So what are some strengths? You know, emphasizes relationship between leader and follower. I'm all for that. I'm all for examining those relationships. I think that is the root of successful leadership, is that those interactions. Provides an otherwise absent explanation for leader preferences, emphasizes communication and the importance of communication, and is supported by the literature. Some not strengths or weaknesses: promotes unfairness and inequitable treatment of followers, which I think right now, especially with our world, that is a no-go. So I do think those leadership making phases need to be emphasized more if you're going to kind of take on some LMX features in your leadership style. No attention to how relationships are built and maintained, or context for the relationship. So we still really don't know, how that in group becomes the in group. I think that if we could figure that out, then there wouldn't be so much bullying going on in the world, so much unfair treatment going on in the world, right? And then there's doubtful assessment. The doubtful assessment is doubtful if the assessment for LMX is robust enough. So not sure if it's giving us enough information to really confirm everything LMX is wanting to do. So, I like to give you guys some application because if we were in a classroom, I would be asking you to think about these things, and we'd be doing stuff in small groups and reflection and all that type of thing. And so these are 5 questions that I thought would be good for you to kind of explore on your own with how you kind of approach. It's specific to LMX. I didn't do anything with path goal, but how you handle the in crowd and the out crowd. And, I think one of the things that I come up upon with working with teams is the click issue, right? So how do those things happen? And so I think you need to think about, we all have favorites. I think that's a human nature thing. But when it spills over into our treatment of our team, then I think that becomes an issue. And so same things with clicks. And so maybe you can reflect through this. Maybe you can even ask your own team these questions. And so hope you enjoyed it, LMX and path goal. All right, go Tigers.